you think about the assets that foundations have in Canada, $5 billion in community foundations, another 35 or 40 billion in private foundations, then a similar amount in some of the public hospital, university foundations. So let's call that 70 billion in assets in the foundation sector in Canada. And if we hit the target of 10% that the Canadian Social Finance Task Force suggested, $6-7 billion potential to be in impact investing. So that's a huge leverage of assets that we could be using to do more than the 4 or 5% that we are normally using for granting. So it's the leverage piece that I think could be enormous and give us new tools to do stuff differently. When you're talking to a board, for example, which I did quite a bit of, you do have to talk about, what is the purpose of this pot of money that you've got from very generous donors? And are we really only going to use 5% of our assets to support our mission? Right. That's the kind of language that you use. And what's about the other 95%, and how do we get that all working toward the social environmental goals we may have? That is the why for board members, but there's more of it that, because my sense of it in both the fields of responsible investing and impact investing is that the champions of that, who are going to move the needle to go down here, are the asset owners. Your investment committee is not going to go there on their own. Your investment manager is not going to go there because they don't want to upset the investment committee, and the committee similarly doesn't really want to upset the board, and the board doesn't want to upset the donors, and so everyone's being really risk averse and cautious. Right. At the Ottawa Community Foundation, the way we got it to go through was that I was the board champion. I convinced the board that we needed to go down this path, and the board said, we're not really sure how we're going to do that, but we get why we want to do that. And so they tell the investment committee, please help us figure this out. The investment committees tell our managers, we want to go there. Are you going to help us, or do we need to find somebody else? And that's how that trickled through. So it's really important for the asset owner to take the lead, because it isn't going to come from your advisors or your committees. It was long and arduous. It was a very steep learning curve. And when we started it, it was in 2008 or 9, right after the financial crisis. So everybody was scared. On the other hand, performance had been so rotten with the market down 30% that we were kind of looking for other solutions. So to bring in something like this was kind of like, okay, let's put that on the table too. So in a way, it was sort of fortuitous. But it was just a slow learning process, and we educated the board over about 2 years, and then we took the plunge. And once we made the decision to go, we had two big issues. We had to get our donors on board because we were setting up a separate fund, and then we really had to get the transactional piece of how we were going to do it. And very quickly, one of our donors stepped up and said, this is so exciting. Like 2 days after the board decision, they said, take $1 million out of our fund in the endowment and put it in this, because we think it's exciting. And we did that, and then Community Forward Fund happened to arrive a couple of months before, and so we had the transactional piece. And if I could add one other point to that, the other risk was, or the other sort of concern was, well, with Community Forward Fund, we're going to provide loans to charities. That's wonderful, but how do we make sure those loans are to Ottawa charities? That we want the place piece in this. Mm-hmm. But working with CFF, and I was quite pleased with that, the granting team at the foundation was able to feed a bit of deal flow because they could see the synergies. And CFF has now done about 2 million of loans to Ottawa charities, and we've only put 1 million in, so there's been leverage there. So I was really pleased how that all worked. Another fund that we've done inside the endowment is in affordable housing, and we've allocated $1 million to the New Market Funds project, which is providing takeout financing for nonprofits that are building affordable housing space, principally in Vancouver at the moment, though they're going to bring it east, and we're encouraging them to do that. So there's a case of putting $1 million into affordable housing into 4 different projects. We're expecting a 4 to 6% return on that, so that's equivalent to traditional real estate, yet we're providing housing to people with mental health difficulties at 70% below market average rents. So what's not to like about that? So our strategy involved, we set that target of 10% that the Task Force on Social Finance had put before us, and so we intended to meet it. through a double strategy of 5% inside the endowment with market-first institutional grade investments and 5% outside the endowment in place-based direct investment. So on the direct investment piece, that's been more of a struggle, but we've allocated about $1.5 million in there now. And in the endowment, we have allocated about $7 million. So together, $8 million in our endowment, our asset under management is about 110. So we're in the 7 to 8% range now, aiming to get 10%. And that's taken us about 3 years. So we're getting there. Trouble is, our CEO is so good at raising money, he keeps getting more in the endowment. So we need to catch up. But that's kind of a nice problem to have. Do your homework, do your research, and start with the board. That's the key lesson I've been able to provide people. As I said earlier, your investment manager is not going to go there unless it's a specialty. Your investment committee is going to be nervous because they see it as risky and weird. The board will understand the alignment with the mission. And you just have to give them enough education to take the leap and let them trust the investment committee to do the tactics and to put it in place.